Antiquity Unveiled, the most marvelous revelations of the 19th century concerning the origin of Christianity, by Jonathan Manning Roberts. Zoroaster, Zarathustra, or Zerdusht. Zarathustra is, of course. Zarathustra. On April 25th, 1878, the following communication was received from Aronimar, who was the presiding spirit of the band under whose ministrations the great work herein presented has been laid before the world. The communication was as follows. Kingdoms and empires have passed away since I was on earth. Revolutions, bloodshed, wars, and pestilence, and yet still the human race advances one step nearer to the great I Am. It is vain for mortals to struggle to keep back the light that spirits are bringing to this world. Oh, where I am, I wish all were. I look not upon the selfishness of humanity. I only contemplate that which is grand and ennobling. Men and women, when they reach the sphere that I have gained, are well purged of all vices. To come back here is difficult, but nevertheless it must be done. Spiritual food must be supplied, and who can supply it so well as those who have gained it by their own experience? To enjoy happiness, it is necessary to know its opposite. It is only by contrast that the real happiness can exist. What do I know of the infinite mind? What do I know of that which is never beyond the reach? Of some trees, the fairest fruit grows nearest the top. In spirit life, it is always nearest the top. And the more we partake of it, the more eager we become to enjoy it. New beauties unfold from day to day, and he or she who will drink at the fountain of eternal truth should never thirst. Not to occupy more time, then I will say, may the good spirits keep you and aid you in the right, and sustain you in the work in which you are engaged. And when your task is done, may you cross the stream to those beautiful realms beyond. I lived about 200 years before the time of Alexander the Great, and until shortly after the death of Cyrus, well known in Persian history. I was a Persian and known in my time as an astrologer. Aronimar. And remember, astrology and astronomy were kind of mixed, because astrology means saying things with the stars. And when I say when they're not mixed, I don't necessarily, if I'm promoting the idea, it's like symbolic ways of talking, not soothsaying. But one wonders what aside from encouraging mediumship, one wonders what the agenda being played out is. It works like this. Little did I think, when I received that communication of what was to follow it through the same medium, it was on March 26th, 1880, that I received the communication from the spirit of Potamon, the founder of Alexandrian or eclectic school of philosophy. Don't associate that with Alexandrian witchcraft, by the way, which opened this remarkable series of spirit communications from ancient and modern spirits. I was aware from that time that Aronimar was the chief of the spirit band that controlled at the sittings I've had weekly with the medium. Since that time, I've never had a communication through the medium that in any way related to myself personally, or the use I was to make of those communications, in forwarding the intentions of the spirits and giving them. Well, can't the medium just be after her own sense of power over the people, or money, or whatever she's getting out of this? This was left apparently solely to my discretion. And as, and as the communications were continued until the spirits declared that they had accomplished their purpose and had completed their work, I must conclude that they at least approved of my management of the mundane department of the work. On July 1881, I learned from the guide of the medium that Aranamar had been waiting for an opportunity to control the medium for a long time, and that the circumstances had not before been such as would enable him to control the medium personally, that he had at least succeeded. And he was compelled to avail himself of that opportunity to do so, or he might be for centuries prevented from saying what he desired to say to me in person at that sitting. Here the guide yielded the control, and the spirit of him who had been known to me as Aranamar took possession of the medium. The following communication was then given. I salute you, sir. You have heard from me from time to time, and once, I think, I communicated directly with you. I'm Zarathustra, Zerdusht. Did they add an E to this? Yeah, they added an E to it. That's a spelling I don't remember anybody ever using. And it produces a sound that's not right. Or Zoroaster, also incorrect. The Daniel of the Jewish scriptures. I lived in those days of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, Hydaspes, and Cyrus. It is important that I communicate with you at this time, and I must ask this of you. In making up or closing your book, I ask that you give this communication as the last by arrangement of the spirits with whom I am acting. I am to close or complete these communications. The Jewish book of Daniel was stolen bodily from the books written by myself, or through me, concerning Ormuzd and Mithra. Zoroaster didn't actually worship the Mithra and the other good and other Ahuras and Yazatas, and Zarathustra only worshipped God. And there's what the religion kind of delineated into the old ethnic ways. It wasn't the religion that changed, it's the people kind of let it dilute and became other things. And sir, I ask you, from all you have known of me during the time that these communications have been given to you, whether I have proven my honesty and acted with the sole object of benefiting humanity, I cardinally and emphatically answered in the affirmative. Oh, sir, how I have desired to come to you, but conditions were necessary that I could not control, which could only be obtained by a power outside of and beyond myself. That power has been exerted, and the conditions have been brought about that enabled me to come to you. I know the importance of availing myself of this opportunity. I might not have been able to give this communication for 500 years to come, did I not do so now. From this, you will understand the importance of it. It will be difficult to find evidence of the truth of what I am about to communicate to you in any books now extant, whether biographical, dictionaries, encyclopedias, encyclopedias, or other works. I will tell you why this is so. Well, the mediums are reading these books, aren't they? Anything that was opposed to the Christian religion can no longer be found in ancient writings because of the care with which all such evidence has been destroyed by Christian priestly zealots. I respond to stuff. I'm not going to pretend that all opinions support my, agree with me. That's silly. And to say that, certain statements, it may not be proved that that statement is differing with me, but I'm definitely going to not pretend that it doesn't exist. This evidence has been destroyed by Christian priestly zealots. Only such evidence as could be considered to favor Christianity, or which did not in the least oppose it, has been allowed to escape similar destruction. I want you to give this point particular attention, for by doing so you will reach the truth. The Hebrew book, called the Book of Daniel, contains the account of the actual earthly experiences of Zoroaster at the court of Nebuchadnezzar and the other kings whom I have already named. All that is mentioned as having transpired in the Book of Daniel occurred through myself as a medium, and has no relation whatever to a Jewish Daniel, but solely relates to Zarathustra of the Persians. I want to commence with that part of the book where mention is made of Nebuchadnezzar eating grass, and explain what was meant by it. The first thing people are going to jump to is, it's marijuana, or it's like the verse in the Bible. I'm going to give you good herbs to eat. It's like, see, it mentions herb. It says herb. That's a modern slang for marijuana. Nobody ever used the word herb for marijuana. Although you can say medicinal herb, it would have been included amongst medicinal herbs, but no. So let's find out what the real thing is. It meant nothing more than that after years of a life of sensuality, the king was struck with a sense of the enormity of his personal conduct, and he was brought to a realization of this through me. Not that I desire to exalt myself by mentioning this fact, for the sole object in doing this is the ground of humanity. I was known as Aronimar at the court of Cyrus. Cyrus the Great, Zulkarnain, as the Quran calls him. I want to understand that, at the court of the king, I was in the position of a philosopher who had reasoned upon the law of cause and effect, karma. Well, I don't know what it is in Persian. Would stand at any court, or in any other condition of life. In the reign of Darius Hydaspes, I went through the ordeal of being cast into a lion's den, but I was a medium, and was attended by a power that protected me from physical injury. But it was through what may be regarded as superior mesmery and psychological power. I received this from spirits, and through that power, I was enabled to calm the fury of the lions. Now, magic can mean trickery, but magic was not playing. People were claiming religious power, but it was really technology, and that's why the word magic has become secular over the centuries. It was I, Zarathustra, who read the handwriting on the wall in the days of Belshazzar, and I did this through the power of spirits. I assure you that I was the original Daniel, and the Jews appropriated my works, and there was a religious teaching promulgated in the age which I lived on earth, which was attributed to the Hermes Trismegistus, that a child should be born of a virgin. And I'm going to have to point out here that this is historically people might have assumed, oh, Zoroaster was during this period. It was at least before the basic Achaemenid rule, but the language of the Avesta kind of indicates that maybe we're talking about something 4,000 years ago, and there are other indications that would put us further back in that culture. Maybe only 3,000. No, we got to go 2,000 years ago. Maybe even the 8,000 years ago that the Parsis speak of, or is it 8,000 years BCE? 8,000 years before some point. I don't remember exactly what year we're talking about, but it would have been, the age of Taurus or Gemini or something. There was a religious teaching promulgated in the age which I lived on earth, which was attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, that a child should be born of a virgin. This was a common belief at that time. I was only a chip floating on the stream of time. Back of me and behind me lies what is known as the phallic religion. That religion taught that the forces of nature express themselves in an individual unit. Armchair anthropologist suppositions seems to be what's coming through very strongly now. Back of and beyond that was that philosophical religion taught by Hermes Trismegistus. This philosophical religion was derived from the planetary and stellar systems and embodied the principles known to you moderns as the law of cause and effect. Back of and beyond that was a Hindu Chaldaic religion, which took its rise at the base of the Himalayan mountains. Now, in the Bible, the Kushti, it was a slur on Kushti, and Kushti, as in they prayed 5 times a day, and they're trying to get magical powers, and they didn't think well of these people trying to put religion in the hands of the people. Took its rise in the base of the Himalayan mountains. There was also a very ancient Phoenician religion. The latter religions had as their chief idea the relations of heat and cold and their effects in nature upon men and crops on which they depended for sustenance. And here I want you to observe what I say particularly. That western continent, by you called America, was progressing at one time, side by side, with the eastern continent, and a man named Booheka taught all the laws of cause and effect in Bolivia and Peru long before Maneo Capa and his wife appeared there. And I want you to say, at the close of your book, that all the sciences and all the knowledge of antiquity are concentrated in 2 books. The nature of one of them, the book of Revelation, has been explained to you by Apollonius of Tyana, and the other is the book of Daniel. These 2 books open up to you the secrets of antiquity. By this I mean, when properly understood and interpreted, but not when literally read. And the latter part of the book, containing these communications, I want this train of information set forth, and the fact impressed upon the reader, that we spirits are not working for applause, but for the good of humanity. I want it further understood that the spirits I have brought to you have been compelled by my power to tell the truth. We also desire that it shall be stated in the close of this book that we are seeking to gain believers in any doctrine. Oh, we are not seekers to gain belief in any doctrine. Then why are they? Oh yeah, the mediums. Oh yeah, the sort of things that you guys are talking about. That's right. Be very cautious. Oh, we don't have beliefs. We don't have dogma. Anybody who says this almost always are trying to push an even stricter form of dogma than what people might be running away from. Well, there might be some exceptions of indifferent people who don't really have much of in the way of, well, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. All we ask of them is that they will examine in order to know the truth. The Book of Daniel is typical of the learning and knowledge of pre-Christian ages, and its meaning is similar to the Book of Apollonius, known to you as the Book of Revelation. We were both inspired. Media and our works overlap each other. And something that was not so common at the time is this idea of, of interaction between the continents. And, Europe, Asia, and Africa are really connected. So a person could think of that as a continent, and North South America as a continent, and Antarctica as a continent, and Australia as a continent, rather than 7 different continents. But there's evidence for some of this, but it wasn't really a common thought until the proof was being laid down starting in the 1950s. Was it not? The 1950s, they started to find out that French people and Spanish people made their way to America over the East Coast down to Florida. I think that was the 1950s where that evidence first became clear, and there were other findings that weren't so commonly known, but curators of the Smithsonian and some other museums would have had this at their disposal to make those conclusions. The spirit could control the medium no longer. Taking my hand, a most unusual manifestation by spirits of their special interest in my work, he bade me an eloquent and fraternal adieu. He still remained, however, and through the guide continued to converse with me. This conversation I could not record, as the spirit seemed unable to remain, and requested me to detain him as briefly as possible. Now, these spirits the jinn have choice, so don't think that they will do whatever you want and they can't disobey, because those who, well, I guess that's why sihr can be called the trickery in its definition, because you're looking at these beings that people think they can conjure them up and make them do what they want, and maybe it's not the being they conjured that's making the appearance, and there's various other factors that we can look at. Among the things said deserving of a special mention was the spirit forces with which Zarathustra was working were fourfold. The leaders or chiefs of which were, first, Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian philosopher and sage who lived 1150 around Gautama Sakya Buddha, the Hindu medium and sage who lived about 950. Third himself, Zarathustra, the medium or Persian medium sage who lived BCE 650. I don't think exactly 650 has been said before as far as what I've seen, but again, there are reasons to say that is wrong, and that also says wrong what some of the supposed spirit communication says. If this is the date, then we know the others not. And fourth, Apollonius of Tyana, the Cappadocian medium and sage, who lived from the beginning to the end of the 1st century of the so-called Christian era. When this revelation was made to me, the mystery had so much perplexed me, was all cleared away. That had so much perplexed me, was all cleared away. Wasn't Aleister Crowley's last words, "I am perplexed," and then he died from a heroin overdose? I had often wondered how the vast array of spirit testimony had been given from week to week through the organism of the medium that had been collected and presented. But this was no longer surprising, and in view of the mighty forces which I was then informed had been consecrated for that very special purpose by four of the great leaders of human thought that had ever lived upon this planet. Behind Hermes Trismegistus were the thousand of millions of Egyptian spirits who worshipped him as an incarnated god, and who were animated as one man by the spirit of their great leader. Behind Gautama, Sakya, Buddha, were the vastly greater number of the spirits of his Mongolian followers, all moved and swayed by him as one man. Behind Zoroaster were the vast spirit host of the Semitic nations of Western Asia. Well, that's part of where the misunderstanding comes, is because he seems to have gone about and had some influence and memory, and once he was gone, after he was gone, people realized that, oh man, we should have followed him in his life, and but a lot of that happened over the centuries, and maybe thousands of years later, you finally had revivals. It was apparent you had revivals, and there's evidence that maybe 4,000 years ago there was a revival of Kanon Zerdusht, and around 2,600 years ago, and there were certain the Sassanian and the Parsian revivals around the 1700s. Wasn't there a revival source? But there were ones since, but they were less guided. And behind Apolloni Septiana were the multitude of his spirit followers among the Greek and Latin-speaking peoples for the first 400 years of the Christian era. It was those combined spirit forces, animated and moved by the spirits of those four great leaders of human thought, with the common purpose of giving the unadulterated truth to the world, that made it possible for these series of communications to be given. Well, the remnants of their teachings may have provoked some stuff, but let me not blame them for the sects that have arisen in their stead. 1,600 years ago, the Christian church was organized with the purpose of presenting the old heathen mythology, theology, allegory, and priestly descriptions of all the preceding religions in a new disguise, which should forever hold the human soul in priestly thraldom, and the human mind in the leading strings of the impious hands of priests. So well did these priestly schemers profit by the experiences of their great and truly wise and benevolent predecessors, that they managed to organize a system of suppressing inquiry and perpetuating human ignorance, such as the world had never before known, and such as it will never know again in all the coming ages. During the past 1,600 years, the Christian Church has been sending to spirit life thousands of millions of ignorant and bigoted spirits whose whole desire and aim has been to perpetuate the ignorance which has governed and controlled them while on earth. These being the latest and most active in the promotion of sectarian bigotry, on entering spirit life, have remained near the earth plane, and have operated as an almost impassable barrier to the return of the older, less selfish, and more advanced ancient spirits who sought to inform mortals of the truths of the afterlife. So they're trying to stop certain demons from having their doctrine. Or at least competing entities. One entity wants its religion, another entity wants its religion, and Christianity is, gaining the favor of some entities. This barrier has at last been broken through by the combined power of the more ancient and advanced spirits, and this series of communications has been the result. Another specially important statement made in reply to a question I asked was that he was not the mythical Zoroaster, the founder of Magianism, or the religion of the Magian astrologers who dated many centuries before himself, but he was the author of the Zend Avesta and the founder of the theology in relation to Ormuzd and Mithra. The ultimatum of the spirit disclosures will be the utter demolition of the bigoted sectarianism that has so long prevailed both in the spirit world and on earth, and its place will rise as enlightened freedom of thought, and this will carry mankind forward over every obstacle that may be thrown in the way of general progress. We give the facts or supposed facts in relation to the great Persian prophet and lawgiver Zarathustra with such comments as may serve to show the significance and importance of this communication coming from the spirit of that great leader of human thought. We take the following only collated facts concerning him and his teachings from Chambers' Encyclopedia Zoroaster, or rather Zarathustra, which in Greek and Latin was corrupted in Zoroastrades and Zoroastres, while the Persians and Parsis altered it into Zerdusht, is the name of the founder of what is now known as the Parsi religion. Zarathustra condemned all who might found religions. The original meaning of this word is uncertain, and though there may have been many conjectures formed about it, yet not one of them seems to be born out of the representative investigations. More probably, it only indicates the notion of a chief, senior, high priest, and it was a common